As sports history fans, we often reminisce about the legends. Willis Reed limping on to the NBA Finals court, Curt Schilling's bloody sock, Kerry Strug's courageous dismount, and so many more. These moments often define sports history. But what about the countless injuries that did not become legends, or careers that were derailed due to inadequate care? That's where this episode's sponsor comes in. Introducing to you, ILP Sports Consultants, your trusted sports injury partner, available 24/7. Brian Maelli at ILP Sports Consultants has over 20 years of experience in the orthopedic and sports medicine industry, and he has worked with athletes across the gamut, from youth to amateurs, professionals, in almost every sport played in the United States of America, accommodating athletes at every stage of their career. This adaptability ensures that ILP services are perfectly tailored to your skill level, no matter where you are in your athletic journey. With ILP, you are in control. Choose the steps that matter most to you. Diagnosis, treatment plan, recovery, or the whole journey. ILP services are tailored to your unique needs. Rushing for care is a common pitfall, leading to future problems. ILP Sports Consultants helps you make the right decisions, ensuring that you receive timely and safe care. And here's a bonus. Brian hosts the Injured List podcast, sharing insights and athlete stories you won't want to miss. Whether you're a concerned parent or grandparent, or an athlete yourself seeking guidance, ILP Sports Consultants is your beacon of hope in sports injury management. Visit ilpsports.com today. That's the letters ilpsports.com. ILP Sports Consultants, where your well-being is the priority and your recovery is the mission. Choose ILP Sports Consultants for a healthier sports journey, helping you get back in the game the smart way. This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com.
Hello, old sports, and welcome to yet another episode of the Hello, Old Sports podcast on the Sports History Network. Before we begin, I'd just like to remind you all to find us on Facebook at Hello, Old Sports Podcast. You can email the show at hellooldsports@gmail.com. Please like and rate and review and follow us on your podcast app of choice. If podcast apps aren't your thing, you can also check us out on YouTube. Just do the same thing. Search for Hello Old Sports Podcast. So lots of ways to find us. And I'd also encourage you just to check out some of the other great shows on the on the Sports History Network. We've got, new ones being added, every month or so. So we're really, really happy about the growth. Andrew and I have been doing this podcast for just about 3 years on the Sports History Network, and really glad to be a part of it and to get to know some really great guys who are doing their own really great sports podcasts. And if you check out the website, you can also buy some gear. You can buy a hat or a t-shirt or a mug with the Hello Old Sports logo on us, and show us your support. So Andrew, how are you doing tonight?
Doing well, Dan. We just recorded the AL East episode, so we're on to number 6, the NL West. Had a very unseasonably warm day here in New York, or in Connecticut today. Geez, I'm not in New York anymore. So we're talking about baseball. It still feels like summer, at least today it did. So I'm excited, although I got to be honest, a couple of these teams we're going to talk about tonight are going to enrage me. One in particular, and when we get to it, I'll go over it. It was enraging putting this team together, and not necessarily who you would think.
So, yeah, this is our starting 9 for the 5 teams in the National League West. We've done the other 5 divisions. You've heard them all. If you haven't heard them all, check them out. And at the end, we're going to rank the 6 division winners 1 to 6. So, Andrew, I believe you went first last time, so why don't I kick it off this time?
Yeah, that works.
All right, so I'm going to start right off with a fun one here, right off with one of the big ones. So I'm going to go with the San Francisco Giants, and my starting 9 was, and this of course is not only the San Francisco Giants, but also the New York Giants of the late 19th and first half of the 20th century. So I'm going to go with Buster Posey, Willie McCovey, Jeff Kent. At third base, Frankie Frisch. Shortstop, I went all the way back to George Davis. And then my outfielders, Willie Mays, Barry Bonds, Mel Ott, and Christy Mathewson.
All right. So we were a little off on the infield. So catcher is Posey. There's no question there. First baseman is Willie McCovey. I had him. The outfield, a strong outfield, by the way. Mel Ott, Willie Mays, Barry Bonds. Pitcher is Christy Mathewson. Can you give me your infield again?
So I mentioned McCovey.
Second short, third.
Jeff Kent at second base, Frankie Frisch at third, George Davis at short.
So it's funny because I have some older guys mixed in there. Second base, I have Larry Doyle. Shortstop, I have Travis Jackson. And then third base, I have Matt Williams. So pick one and we'll go over it and we'll see.
All right, well, let's go around the horn. You had Larry Doyle at second base. I had Jeff Kent.
I should have known you were going to have Jeff Kent.
Why?
You love Jeff Kent. You always talk about Jeff Kent.
Yeah, every year when we do our Hall of Fame episode, I talk about the Hall of Fame candidacy of Jeff Kent.
You talk about him when the episode we do an episode on boxing, and you find a way to talk about Jeff Kent.
I think that's only because Jeff Kent and Barry Bonds almost fought a couple of times. So Jeff Kent, only 6 years, a 31.4 WAR compared to Larry Doyle, 13 years and a 42.8 WAR. He had a 297 average compared to 292 for Doyle. Steals, obviously, Doyle's going to be way ahead in that 291 to 57. And then 175 home runs. It's not really a fair comparison with Larry Doyle because the MVP award wasn't necessarily around in those days. But Jeff Kent won an MVP in, I believe, 2000 was his MVP with the Giants, and that was right before Bonds started winning them. Yeah, was on the team up through the 2002 World Series year when he departed for the Houston Astros after sort of not getting along with Bonds, like we talked about. 5-time All-Star. So that to me is the case for Jeff Kent. Maybe there's a little bit of recency bias on my part there, but I feel like there were a couple years where he was really, and I should correct myself here. The MVP award.
You're stealing my thunder.
Go ahead.
He won the Chalmers Award in 1912. He won the Chalmers Award. The Giants won the pennant that year, by the way. He came in third in 1911 and then 17th in 1913. So he did win the award one year.
He did, yeah, and that was sort of when it was a very strange thing. Like there were years when both leagues would have an MVP award. There were years when only one league would have an MVP award. In the 1920s, the rule was if you won it once, you couldn't win it again. So that's why Babe Ruth was an MVP in 1927. So more years with the team, won a batting title in that same year, left the team for the Cubs for a year and a half, and then came back. I've mentioned before, but I used this great book, Now Taking the Field, Baseball's all-time dream teams for all 30 franchises by a gentleman by the name of Tom Stone. Let me see where he went with this at
Doyle,
second
by
base.
the way, 10th in WAR in Giants franchise history, 42.7. Kent down at 31.6. Now, I know Kent played less years, but that bears mentioning.
So he did go Kent over Doyle, but I can go with Doyle. Doyle, he was on the Giants a lot longer than Jeff Kent. He did win that MVP award, such as it was, and there were a lot of he finished above that year such guys as Honus Wagner, Joe Tinker, some of his own teammates, Rube Marquard, Christy Mathewson. So I think it's close. It's very hard to compare guys so far apart, almost a century apart, who played, had different strengths, played in different cities, all that stuff. But I am comfortable to give in on Larry Doyle.
Okay. So what's next? Shortstop?
Yeah, let's go with shortstop. I went all the way back to George Davis. And where did you go?
I went with Travis Jackson.
So Davis was on the team in the late 19th century, 1893 to 1901. Jackson, Hall of Famer, played with the team for a long time, 22 to 36. He was elected by the Veterans Committee in 82. He's another one of those questionable Veterans Committee elections of the 20s and I'm sorry, of the 70s and 80s. WAR is close. 44.0 for Jackson, 44.5 for Davis. Davis does it in 5 fewer years. His batting average while with the Giants is 40 points higher, 332 to 291. Davis, for what this is worth, also steals 357 bases compared to Jackson's 70. Jackson's 71. So I lean towards George Davis here just based on the numbers. I don't claim to be a great expert in the career of either guy, but it does seem like the numbers favor Davis just a little bit.
And I'm assuming, was he considered one of the best players of that particular era?
I think so. He's not in the Hall of Fame, but then again, Travis Jackson probably shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame either. My guess is he was more esteemed in his time than Travis Jackson was in his. Not that Travis Jackson was a bad player by any means, but we're talking about the 20s and 30s. And even with in his own team, there were guys like Mel Ott, Bill Terry, who were much more well regarded in the public eye than Travis Jackson was. So I think if you're okay with it, we'll stick with Davis on that one.
All right. And then third base, you had who?
Frankie Frisch. Yeah.
And so this was one that surprised me because he was one that I had thought, okay, it's going to be an automatic. Frisch goes there. Was a little surprised. He only plays how many full seasons there? 6 full seasons, 7 full seasons. I guess if you count 1919. If you have the franchise stats up, I'm trying to pull them up too, but I felt I kind of went with Williams and surprised myself a little bit just when I ended up looking at the stats. Williams with a career WAR with the Giants of 34.1. Frisch's is 38.1, so just above there. Batting average, Frisch is 5th. So a lot of these do seem to favor Frisch. I think Williams, from a power standpoint, obviously is gonna dominate that discussion. I know Frisch is a Hall of Famer, so it probably does tilt towards Frisch, I guess.
Yeah, you're right about Williams. His case is probably stronger than some people might think. Frisch, also, his best years are probably in St. Louis. He actually gets traded.
That's the other thing, yeah.
He actually gets traded before the 1927 season to the Cardinals for Rogers Hornsby, a legendary infielder in his own right. Hornsby lasts 1 year with the Giants before moving on to the Cubs and some other places to close out his career. So I agree, but maybe the combination of the championships, because Frisch won at least one title with the Giants. Yeah, 20. He was there in 22 and 20 or 21 and 22. So won a couple of titles with them and also is in the Hall of Fame.
Here's why I think I actually went the way I went is not because of that. Frisch was primarily not a third baseman with the Giants.
He played twice as many games at third as he did at second. I'm sorry, twice as many games at second as he did at third.
That's why I didn't end up going with Frisch, and then I went with Doyle just because I thought Doyle's body of work was stronger at second base. So obviously you can put Frisch there. That was the reason, now that I'm remembering, that was the reason I didn't go with him initially.
Do you want to since we didn't feel too strongly about our second base pick, do you want to put Williams at third and move Frisch to second?
Would you be good with that?
Yeah, why don't we do that?
All right. So Frisch. So the infield is Frisch at second, George Davis at short, Matt Williams at third.
Yes. So our
right.
final Giant lineup: Buster Posey, Willie McCovey, Frankie Frisch, Matt Williams, George Davis, Willie Mays, Barry Bonds, Mel Ott, and Christy Mathewson. A good mix. You got how many guys that were exclusively San Francisco guys? You got 4 guys that were San Francisco guys. You got 4 guys that knew you were New York guys, and then you got Mays, who was both. So that's a good split.
And we spent a lot of time on the parts we disagreed with, second, short, third. I just want to pause for a second and talk about how phenomenal this outfield is. Mel Ott, Willie Mays, Barry Bonds, and then also down at the bottom to the pitcher, Christy Mathewson, one of the best pitchers of all time, clearly the best pitcher of his era. So it's definitely a very strong team, even though we kind of focused on the guys who maybe are towards the bottom in terms of greatness.
Yeah, no, this is a solid team. We will discuss this team further later, I am sure.
All right, I'm going to go with the Rockies. I feel like if we go with the Dodgers right away, it kind of ruins it. Catcher, I have Chris Iannetta. First baseman, Todd Helton. Second baseman, DJ LeMahieu. Shortstop, Troy Tulowitzki. Third base, Nolan Arenado. Outfielder, Larry Walker, Carlos Gonzalez, Matt Holliday, and then the pitcher, Ubaldo Jimenez.
8 for 9.
Catcher?
Nope, I had Chris Iannetta. So the only place I disagreed with you, I don't know if we've had a perfect 9 for 9 yet. We've probably had one at some point.
I think we did, but
I thought we were going to get it. I had Ubaldo Jimenez as the starting pitcher. You had Carlos Gonzalez. I went with a contemporary of his. I went with Charlie Blackmon.
And that's close. That was one of the guys. You know, Walker obviously goes in and Holliday. So that I was debating between these two as well. So it's a good discussion.
3 All-Star appearances as a Rocky for Gonzalez. 4 All-Star appearances as a Rocky for Charlie Blackmon. Blackmon wins a batting title in 2017. Gonzalez wins a batting title in 2010. No Gold Gloves for Blackmon, few for Carlos Gonzalez. Let's look at WAR with the Rockies. 23.8 in 2 years for Gonzalez. With the Rockies, 20.7 in his whole career has been with the Rockies for Charlie Blackmon. Maybe I leaned Blackmon a little bit because he's been on the team his whole career and still is. But yeah, this is incredibly close. I guess maybe the Gold Gloves would just push Gonzalez over just a little bit for me. So I could take that.
Yep. And one thing, and Jimenez, again, there's not much there. Jimenez was one of the best pitchers in baseball for a very, very brief time, but it's more than you can say for basically anybody else who's been on this Rockies team at any point. You know, there's no guy who was a B+ pitcher for 10 years for them. You kind of are left with, do you go with a guy who was an A to A+ for a very short amount of time? The one thing I will say about this team, it's a pretty strong team for what they are. They've been around 30 years. They've been mostly bad. I know they made the one World Series, but maybe longevity because they couldn't afford to hold on to these guys, a lot of them, except Helton. But look at this infield. Helton, LeMahieu, Tulowitzki, Arenado, and then the outfield, Walker, Holliday. The catcher's a little weak. Starting pitcher's a little weak. But this is a pretty good team, all things considered.
Yeah, they're like you said, they're weak in the battery and they're weak compared to some other teams. But yeah, it's not a horrible team. We've seen worse.
Yeah. So we're good there. So that leaves 3 teams left to go.
All right. So I don't know if I ran through it real quick. Our final for the Colorado Rockies: Chris Iannetta, Todd Helton, DJ LeMahieu, Nolan Arenado, Troy Tulowitzki, Matt Holliday, Larry Walker, Carlos Gonzalez, and Ubaldo Jimenez. And I am going to go to the San Diego Padres. And
this was enraging. Every guy on this team was on the team for 2 years. This was the most annoying. I have a note here that says every guy on this team was there for 2 years. This was, for a team that's been around for as long as they have. I just talked about the Rockies and said this was a better. This Padres thing was infuriating to put together.
So I took a first pass at this months ago when we first did this concept. And then I went back and looked at it a day or two ago. And I noticed that for the last couple, like I basically filled in everything I could and then was going to do more research. And the only two guys I had filled in for the Padres were Tony Gwynn and Dave Winfield. And then I needed to do some research on the rest of them. So here is what I came up with. And it's a lot more modern than maybe I would have thought. Catcher is Benito Santiago. In the infield, I went with Adrian Gonzalez, Jake Cronenworth at second base, Manny Machado at third, Fernando Tatis at short, Tony Gwynn and Dave Winfield in the outfield, along with Ryan Klesko. And then my pitcher was Jake Peavy.
All right. So we agree on 6, I believe. So let me read these. So first base, Adrian Gonzalez, correct?
Correct.
Shortstop, Tatis Jr.
Also correct.
Third base, Machado.
Yep.
Outfielders, Gwynn, Winfield, and then the pitcher is Jake Peavy.
Correct. I think that there's been a few Padres that have won Cy Young awards, but Gaylord Perry won it in 78. Randy Jones, Mark Davis. The only guy who was really on the team for any real meaningful period of time was Peavy, and that was why I went with him. So yeah, that was why I went with him as the he also in that Cy Young award year, he also won the pitching triple crown, which is wins, ERA, and strikeouts, which is pretty impressive. He's got several years, 3 in a row of over 200 strikeouts. So I went with him, even though Gaylord Perry's in the Hall of Fame. He was only in San Diego for a couple of years. So yeah, I did go with Peavy. It sounds like we disagree at catcher, second base, and one of the outfield positions.
So catcher, I went with Gene Tennis. He was not there long, 77, 78, 79, 80. So he was only there for 4 years. He is 5th all time in WAR, only behind Gwynn, Winfield, Machado, and Gonzalez among this team. He's got a 19.8 WAR. He was regarded as a very good defensive catcher as well. Had some years with Oakland before that. So it's not like, he came in as an established player. He leads the franchise still in on-base percentage all time at 403. Again, small sample size compared to a guy like Tony Gwynn, who sits in second. But I did go with Gene Tennis. I guess the knock on him is just such a short tenure.
Yeah. My case for Santiago wasn't particularly strong. He was a 4-time All-Star. He was Rookie of the Year with the Padres in 1987, won 3 Gold Glove awards. He had a really good arm behind the plate. Played 7 years with the Padres, and then in his other 13th season, he played on 9 different teams. So he had moved around a lot other than that tenure with the Padres. In fact, he was the catcher, despite his advanced age, on the 0-2 San Francisco Giants team that made it to the Game 7 of the World Series. Yeah, based just on the length of, or the amount of WAR and how much higher, and the fact that his WAR average is over 4, whereas Santiago's was only about 2. Incidentally, here's another catcher who won a World Series MVP in the same time frame for some of the guys we were talking about in our last episode. He did his with Oakland, so it doesn't factor in here. He also made his only All-Star team ever with Oakland. Santiago was an All-Star a couple of times with the Padres. So, yeah, this is really close.
I was gonna say you mentioned Santiago longer, more all-star appearances. I think maybe that's enough. I could go either way.
Yeah. So why don't we do that? Why don't we go with Santiago there?
Second base, you went with Klesko. Was that what you said?
No, Klesko was in the outfield.
I'm sorry.
Second base, I went with Jake Cronenworth, who is currently on the team. He's in his fourth year with the team. He was an all-star in 21 and 22. In 4 years, his WAR with the team is 11.5, so that's just under 3 a year. He had 2 really good years in 21 and 22. He did not have a great year in 2023. He missed some time. I assume he was probably injured. So his first 3 seasons, he plays in 54, which that's the COVID year. So he misses 6 games, 152, 158, and then this year he's down to 127. I don't know exactly what happened to him, but nothing great. He's in sort of the 70s, 80s for RBIs, double-digit home runs. He was an all-star for the Padres in 21 and 22, second in Rookie of the Year in 2020. So anything great? No, but I'll be curious to see where you went with the whole thing, but I just couldn't find anything that was as appealing as the guy who they got there now.
I went with Roberto Alomar. He was only there 3 years. He was 5th in Rookie of the Year. He was an all-star in his 3rd year there. It looks like he's still slightly got the edge on Cronenworth in WAR and it looks like he's still up there in defensive WAR. He was only there he's 11th all time in batting average, but again, 3 years. I get it. Obviously not known for being with the Padres. I actually wrote I give up in parentheses on this one because how much time are you going to spend on this? But that is who I went with.
It's funny if you look at his 3 years with the Padres and Cronenworth's 3 plus a COVID year, there's actually a lot of similarities. Batting average, his batting average with the Padres was 283, whereas Cronenworth's batting average, it's much lower. It's 249. Yeah, I mean, you're grading Alomar based on what he did subsequently. So I don't know. To me, if you're just looking at Padres careers, I think Cronenworth might actually have the slight edge.
All right, let's go with that then.
And then outfield.
I went with Steve Finley. Again, a relatively short period, 95 through 98. He was there. He did win 2 Gold Gloves. He was an all-star in 97. He finished 10th in MVP in 96. He was, obviously on that 98 team that went to the World Series. He hit damn near 297, 298, 261, 95 RBIs, 92 RBIs. Better after that when he went to Arizona, so he may come up again here in a few minutes, but I went with Finley.
WAR was close between them. Finley 4 years, 8.6, so that's 2 and change. He won 2 Gold Gloves. He had over 25 homers and 90 RBIs. Klesko, okay, this might be another one of those. Klesko played more games at first than in the outfield. His WAR is about the same, sort of a 2 and change per year. 276 versus 279, so that's really close. Home runs, Klesko's got it, but he was more of a power hitter anyway. Maybe partially based on the fact that you've given it to me on the other 2, and maybe partially based on the fact that Finley was just an outfielder and won a couple Gold Gloves at the position, and Klesko was more of a first baseman. Maybe because of those reasons, I'm inclined to go with I'm inclined to give in with you with Steve Finley on this one.
All right, let's go with that then. So you want to read off what we got?
Sure. We got Benito Santiago, Adrian Gonzalez, Jake Cronenworth, Manny Machado, Fernando Tatis Jr., Tony Gwynn, Dave Winfield, Steve Finley, and the pitcher is Jake Peavy. Incidentally, we did not mention I think one of the few Padres, the only Padre ever to win an MVP award, and that was Ken Caminiti at third base in 1996. Some of that is probably, he's tarnished so much by the steroid thing, although maybe that's not fair of us to do in this particular case, only because we we didn't hesitate with other steroid guys. Here's another guy, 4 years with the Padres. He comes over from Houston, plays 4 years, then goes back to Houston. But in that time, he did win Gold Gloves. He won 3 Gold Gloves, made 3 All-Star teams, and was MVP in '96 with 40 home runs and 130 RBIs. Just for the heck of it, real quick here, let me just look at the WAR. 17.5 for Caminiti, and then I think Machado's done a lot better than that, even just in his Padres career so far. He came over from Baltimore, or he was with the Dodgers for half a season. Then he came over in the 19 season. So that's 5 years for Machado, and his 5 years is 31.9. Caminiti's 4 years was 16.6. So Machado's at about a 6 WAR. Caminiti's at about a 4. So we're not wrong going with Machado, but it is interesting that the only guy ever to win an MVP for the franchise, it was not chosen by either one of us.
Yeah, that is a good point. So we have 2 left. We have the Dodgers. We have the Diamondbacks. Obviously very different in terms of who we're going to talk about. I guess I'll go with the Dodgers, and then we'll finish up with the Diamondbacks, and then we'll have to rank everything. So for the Dodgers, which obviously includes the Brooklyn Dodgers, which includes the Brooklyn Robins, the Brooklyn Bridegrooms, the Brooklyn 900 other things.
Superbas.
Probably not the Superbas, yes. I have at catcher Roy Campanella, first base Gil Hodges. I wrote barely. Second base Jackie Robinson, shortstop Pee Wee Reese, third base Ron Say, outfield Zach Wheat, Duke Snyder, Pedro Guerrero, and then Sandy Koufax is my pitcher.
When you say barely with Hodges, is that with Steve Garvey?
Yeah. I was honestly inclined to give it to Garvey because I was like, do I have too many of the boys of summer on here? And I went back and forth, and I went with Hodges.
Let's look at it real quick.
How many, do you want to look at this first? Do you want to tell me how many we differ on?
We differ on 1. So,
okay.
Yeah, we differ.
That makes me feel like I did a decent enough job. I have a feeling is it the Hodges one or no?
No, it's not Hodges. It's one of your outfielders.
I know. It's Pedro Guerrero. Yeah.
Yeah, and I had Willie Davis, who was another LA Dodger.
Another one I considered. Yeah. Okay. We were on the same. We're on the same. We're close. Go ahead.
WAR between Hodges and Garvey is close. 44.4 in 16 years for Hodges, 36.4 in 14 years for Garvey. Although I will note that at least one of the seasons that Hodges was quote unquote on the Dodgers was only like one or 2 games. We're going to go with Hodges because we both picked him. And other than in rare occurrences, we don't tend to revisit guys who we both picked. But I am just curious as far as games played here. Hodges played in 2006 games with the Dodgers, and Garvey with the Dodgers, which was most of his career before he went to San Diego, 1,727. So that's like a 300, just under a 300 game difference. So that's like a season and a half difference. Yeah, I mean, it is close. Steve Garvey's a hell of a player. Gold Glove awards, although Hodges won a few Gold Glove awards when the award first came out. It's really, really close. And maybe this is some of my bias because I've always been a Gil Hodges guy. I was so excited that he got into the Hall of Fame 2 years ago, last year, actually, I guess 2022. I was doubly excited that thanks to Arnie and our colleagues at the Sports History Network for setting it up, Andrew and I and my wife Allison got to go to that Hall of Fame induction with press passes, which was an amazing day and something we hope to do again at some point soon. So for all those reasons, I think we will stick with Hodges. But yeah, Garvey's close. I can definitely get on board with the fact that Garvey being close. The other
Hodges,
thing
by the way, played one of the last games of the year, if not the last game of the year in 43, and then didn't play at all in 44 or 45 because of military service. So
the other thing that's tempting to do when you deal with the Dodgers, and as I mentioned, we dealt with this a little bit when we talked about our all-time New York National League team. Jackie Robinson in his career, in addition to all the other amazing things about Jackie Robinson, in a 10-season career from 47 to 56, and this is not just subbing, like there was a year at his first year where he was their regular first baseman. Then he was their regular second baseman for a few years. Then he was their regular, I believe it was left fielder for 2 or 3 years. And then he was their regular third baseman. So I'm always tempted to kind of get creative and use the versatility of Jackie Robinson, but it really didn't seem to work in this case. So leave that kind of as it is. The other one that I just kind of want to comment on is Pee Wee Reese, because I almost feel like Pee Wee Reese in a certain way, like maybe doesn't, you kind of think that maybe he wasn't a great player since you know him more as the guy who was the supporter of Jackie Robinson. But in 16 seasons, he's got a 66.4 WAR with the Dodgers, and that's more than 4 a season. The next closest guy in this book is Maury Wills with 12 years and 31.9 WAR. So that's less than 3. And I don't believe that anybody since then has sort of come close to that. So despite the fact that he's better known for off the field things, I'm almost more, I'm comfortable with Pee Wee Reese being the guy. So, yeah, for the last outfield spot, I was with you on Koufax. I was with you on Snyder and going all the way back to Zach Wheat for the other outfield position, who's the one Brooklyn Dodger that we have on the team before the 50s. I was comfortable with those. So really it just gets to outfield, and you had Pedro Guerrero and I had Willie Davis, 2 LA Dodgers. So what are your thoughts?
So if you look at Davis, does seem to have him quite a bit in WAR. Guerrero, it seems like when you look, as I'm looking at this more, I'm not going to put up much of a fight on Davis. It seems like there might be a stronger case to be made for Davis, to be honest. Do you have the number comparisons there?
Yeah, 11 years, 32.6 for Guerrero, so that's just under 3. 14 years, 54.4 for Davis. That's just under 4. Davis, 2-time All-Star, 3-time Gold Gloves, stole 20 plus bases in 11 straight seasons. Guerrero played all over the place, third base, all 3 outfield positions, and first base. My guess, he had 25 home runs or more 4 times with the Dodgers. My guess is Guerrero's got him in the power numbers, 171. No, it's closer than I thought, 171 to 154, average 309 to 279. So Guerrero's got him in average. And then I'd have to look on Baseball Reference for RBIs because the book doesn't have it. So
yeah, Davis is 9th with 849. Guerrero's 20th with 585. So yeah, this is looking more and more like Davis.
All right, so we'll go with Davis, and another really good team. We got Roy Campanella, Gil Hodges, Jackie Robinson, Ron Say, Pee Wee Reese, Zach Wheat, Duke Snyder, Willie Davis, and Sandy Koufax. Only 2 guys there who were exclusively LA Dodgers, those being Say and Davis, although you obviously think of Koufax as more of an LA Dodger, much more obviously than a Brooklyn Dodger. He didn't really do much of anything until they got out to LA. It's always very interesting. I don't think there's been a Hall of Fame Dodgers position player since they moved to Los Angeles, at least not a guy who played the majority or the vast majority of his career there. The one who comes immediately to mind is Mike Piazza, but he, is better known as a Met. So there's really, despite all the great pitching they've had, Koufax, Drysdale, Sutton, Kershaw, even guys like Fernando and Hershiser who aren't in the Hall of Fame, they've had some very good position players, guys who won MVP, that type of thing, but they haven't had a surefire Hall of Fame position player play most or all of his career with the Dodgers since they moved to Los Angeles, and that's, getting on 70 years ago now. So,
years,
yeah.
And they've been good too. They've been crazy good. They're one of the. If you take out, they're one of the best franchises in baseball since they moved to LA. Forget about anything before that.
Yeah, they won a title in the 50s, 2 in the 60s, 2 in the 80s, and then they won one 3 years ago. Yeah, so they've been damn good.
And in a lot of situations, Clayton Kershaw doesn't make this team or even get much consideration because it's literally Sandy Koufax he's going against. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and Kershaw would be second, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Even over Drysdale.
And there's a lot of teams, not just in this division, but how many teams do we think Kershaw would be the pitcher for? It's at least half.
Yeah, it might be well more than half.
It's probably closer to 20 or over 20 than it is to half. So, yeah.
All right, so we've got a conversation that we have to have here, I think. But first, we need to talk about the Arizona Diamondbacks. And so let me pull up my list for the Diamondbacks here, and I'll just ask you to...
I hope we agree on a lot of these.
So here's my list, and it's actually a lot more modern than you might think. I didn't have many guys from I had a lot fewer guys from the 90s than I thought. Miguel Montero, Paul Goldschmidt, Ketel Marte, the aforementioned Matt Williams, Nick Ahmed at shortstop. My outfield is AJ Pollock, the aforementioned Steve Finley, Luis Gonzalez, and the pitcher is Randy Johnson.
So we're 8 of 9 here. Montero, Goldschmidt, Mate, Williams, Ahmed, Gonzalez, Steve Finley, Randy Johnson, 8 of 9. So the odds that, I assumed we were going to have Luis Gonzalez. We were going to have Randy Johnson. He was there, 5 years and won 4 Cy Youngs, or 4 years and won 4 Cy Youngs, or whatever it was, whatever insane number that, or no, he was there a little longer than that, right?
He came to the team in 99. He was traded by the Mariners at the deadline. He was the first guy to leave the Mariners. Griffey left after the 99 season. A-Rod left after the 2000 season. In his first 4 years with the team, 99, 2000, 2001, 2002, he was the Cy Young Award winner all 4 years. And then in 2003, he's hurt. He only pitches in 18, only makes 18 starts. And then in 04, at 40 years of age, in his last year with the Diamondbacks, he has another, not an incredibly sort of flooring year, but he still is 16-14 with a 2.6 ERA, starts 35 games. So he basically makes his turn every time around, leads the league in strikeouts with 290, and finishes second in 04 in the NL Cy Young Award race. He finishes behind Clemens, who's with Houston. So yeah, in 6 years, 4 Cy Youngs, leads him to a World Series, wins 3 games in that 01 World Series. He's co-MVP with Curt Schilling. So yeah, and then he actually goes back to Arizona for 2 more years after he leaves the Yankees for whatever that's worth. So yeah, Schilling had some good years with the Diamondbacks, but it pales in comparison to Johnson, and the idea that it would be anybody else is just preposterous. So it's him.
So I did have Justin Upton over Pollock. I think Upton maybe gets a little punished just because he didn't live up to the expectations he was supposed to live up to, but he did still have, 7 or 8 good years with the he still did have like 7 or 8 good years with Arizona. He's 5th all time in on base percentage for the franchise. He's 6th all time in slugging percentage. OPS, he's 4th. So, some of the more power numbers, he's up there. I think he made a few all-star teams. So I think he gets a little bit punished just based on not living up to those expectations. And certainly Pollock, maybe on the balance, had a better career, but I was just throwing in the consideration for Justin Upton.
Pollock, 13.7 WAR in 6 years. That's a little over 2. I'm sorry. No, that's Upton. I'm sorry. 13.7 in 6 years. That's like, just short of 2.5. And then Pollock, 7 and his 7 years, his WAR is 18.7, and that's like that's a little over 2.5. But you're right. Pollock is a one-time All-Star and also wins a Gold Glove in his one really good year. In fact, the 1 year he plays more than 140 games is 2015, and that's when he makes his one All-Star appearance and wins his only Gold Glove. Upton never a Gold Glover, but does make a couple of All-Star teams. Yeah, I'm fine with Upton. We're picking between two guys who didn't really overly distinguish himself, but I'm fine with going with BJ Upton. Numbers are just a little better.
All right.
That makes our final Diamondbacks lineup: Miguel Montero, Paul Goldschmidt, Ketel Marte, Matt Williams. Matt Williams appears twice on this list. Nick Ahmed, Luis Gonzalez, Steve Finley, another guy who appears twice on this list. BJ Upton, BJ replaces an AJ, so BJ Upton gets it, and the great Randy Johnson at pitcher. So I guess the first thing we want to do is rank these. I feel like Colorado's got to be 5.
The Padres team is horrible, but they have Tony Gwynn and Dave Winfield. So I think the Rockies have to be 5, but honestly, a relatively strong 5 for what they are.
Yeah, and I would go Arizona 4, because other than Randy Johnson, the rest of this team is pretty pedestrian. Whereas
Goldschmidt had some really nice years.
Yeah, I'll give you Goldschmidt. But you figure in San Diego, you got two guys who are, great players in Gwynn and Winfield. And then, Machado has put up some great numbers so far. Tatis, despite his, ringworm, has put up, not great. He has put up some good numbers too. So I would actually go Arizona 4, San Diego 3 here.
Arizona 4, San Diego 3. Okay. Yeah. And the Rockies 5. Yeah. Then a big gap.
Yeah, then a very big gap. And I have to say, this is actually not as close as I thought it would be. It's close, but it's not super, super close. This is not as close as when we did the NL East or when we did the AL Central, 2 that we really debated over for a while. What are your thoughts on this? Because then I want to give you mine.
I mean, the outfield for the Giants is so good.
Yeah, that's
so good. And that's honestly, for a minute, I thought you were going to say, I mean, look, if you're just going to go every player and you go, oh, wow, Gil Hodges, really good player. Roy Campanella, really good player. Jackie Robinson, Pee Wee Reese, Ron Say. Those names might mean more than, Frankie Frisch or Matt Williams or, I know we didn't end up with these guys, but Travis Jackson or whatever. But Buster Posey, but before we go any further, let's not dismiss how good Buster Posey was. Buster Posey was a modern day, legendary catcher, like legend, in modern day sense. But let's not dismiss that.
Now, yeah, he didn't face some of the adversity that Campanella did, either on the segregation side or on the the paralysis side, that tragic accident that brought Campanella's career to an end. But same type of thing, guy who's a catcher, a guy who hits for power and was good enough to win an MVP as a catcher. Now Campanella won 3, but yeah, that's closer than you might think. And Posey's going to be in the Hall of Fame.
And, I look and I say, and we could talk all day. Honestly, the pitching is a very good discussion because Koufax was probably the most dominant pitcher over an 8-year span or 7, whatever years it was that we've seen pretty much ever. Christy Mathewson was that dominant, much different era, but for longer. If he was a hair less than Koufax was in his prime, which he might not have been, but let's say he was, because who was alive? You know what I mean? He did it for a long time and I know pitching wasn't easy in the 50s and 60s when Sandy Koufax was doing it, but pitching was also really not easy when Christy Mathewson was doing it. It was easier in the course of a game because of the dead ball era. But in the course of a career, with what the toll it took on your arm, with the amenities, the lack of any sort of medical, you know what I mean? They would send him in to pitch in relief the day after he pitched a complete game. So that's a discussion. And then the other thing I wanted to mention, people don't understand how good Mel Ott was. Everybody's going to understand. I mean, obviously, people listening to this podcast might have more of a sense of it. People know Barry Bonds. People know Willie Mays. People don't know just how good for just how long Mel Ott was between 1926 and 1947.
He played forever.
He was 17 when he came up. He was 38 when he retired. He hit 511 home runs. He had to have been the National League leader when he retired, right?
Yeah, late 40s. I can't think of who the heck else it would have been over 500. Absolutely.
Career 304 hitter, 414 on base percentage. He finished, he's an all-star how many times in a row? Never won an MVP, but he was fifth, he was sixth, he was seventh, he was fourth, he was third. He's clearly the third in this outfield, but he's a generational player. He might not be an all-time god, but he's the next rung down.
Yeah, and the other thing I would add to that is you talk about people don't know how good Mel Ott was. I think there's a lot of people who dismiss how good Willie McCovey was. Now, McCovey's got this weird thing for a guy who played, and this isn't a Minnie Minoso, Satchel Paige type of thing where the guy, came back for a day. For a guy who played in 4 different decades, he played from 59 to 80. He only made 6 all-star teams. So there's a little bit of a strangeness to the McCovey career. Early in his career, they were trying to they were basically platooning him and Orlando Cepeda at first base. So in 62, when the team that makes the World Series, McCovey only appears in 91 games for the Giants because they just, there's no DH and they're trying to figure out a spot for both him and for Orlando Cepeda. Cepeda eventually ends up getting traded to St. Louis. But you're talking home run numbers here for McCovey, 44, 39, 36. And some of these are when pitching is dominant. 1968, the year of the pitcher, when you got Bob Gibson and Don Drysdale in the National League, McCovey's got 36 home runs and 105 RBIs, leads baseball in both, 545 slugging, 656, 612, MVP with the Giants in 69. So I love Gil Hodges, but McCovey is a much, much better offensive player than Gil Hodges. So that's another one people don't realize. And just to add sort of one other aspect to this, Mays, Bonds, and Ott are all much, much better than Wheat, Snyder, or Willie Davis.
Mays, Bonds, and Ott are the 3 best position players on this list.
You mean between the Giants and the Dodgers?
Yes.
Yeah, that's correct. That's absolutely correct. Yeah.
So the Dodgers are very, very good, but the Giants' all-time starting 9 is better.
Absolutely. All right. So we've got one more thing left to do here, and that's to come up with our ranking of 6 we started this. We did a couple episodes in April. We did a couple episodes over the summer. We're doing a couple episodes now. So let me just give you all of the lineups, and we will start with the American League East was Yogi Berra, Lou Gehrig, Tony Lazzeri, Alex Rodriguez, Derek Jeter, Babe Ruth, Mickey Mantle, Joe DiMaggio, and Whitey Ford. The American League Central was the Detroit Tigers, and that's Bill Freehan, Hank Greenberg, Charlie Gehringer, Alan Trammell, Miguel Cabrera, Ty Cobb, Al Kaline, and Hal Newhouser. We went with Newhouser over Verlander there. In the American League West, it's the Athletics franchise, Mickey Cochran, Jimmy Fox, Eddie Collins, Frank Home Run Baker, Bert Campaneris, Al Simmons, Ricky Henderson, Reggie Jackson, and Lefty Grove. National League, in the East, the Atlanta Braves with Joe Torre, Freddie Freeman, Ozzie Albies, Eddie Matthews, Rabbit Moranville, Hank Aaron, Andrew Jones, Dale Murphy, and Warren Spahn. NL Central is the Cardinals, Yadier Molina, Albert Pujols, Rogers Hornsby, Ken Boyer, Ozzie Smith, Stan Musial, Enos Slaughter, Lou Brock, and Bob Gibson. And finally, that we just did in the National League West, the Giants, Buster Posey, Willie McCovey, Frankie Frisch, Matt Williams, George Davis, Willie Mays, Barry Bonds, Mel Ott, and Christy Mathewson. So this is going to be sort of by its nature a little bit imperfect, especially because, having already recorded 2 episodes, we're not looking to reinvent the wheel here. The first thing that jumps out at me, I kind of feel like the Braves might be 6th.
So I kind of ranked the leagues as you were saying them. I knew that's not how we were going to do it, but I ranked these league 1 through 3. I did have the Braves 3rd in the National League, and I'm not rotating like league by league. I feel like the Braves and the Tigers are 5 and 6.
Yeah, maybe the Tigers are 6. I mean,
pitching with the Tigers brings it down a little bit, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it could have been Verlander, although Verlander was his best years were with Houston. Pitching does bring the Tigers down a little bit. Trammell's a Hall of Famer, but he's not a dominant Hall of Famer. Same thing with Charlie Gehringer. Other than Cobb, there's not really a sort of a definite Hall of Famer there. I'm sorry?
A baseball god.
Yeah, a pantheon guy. The Braves, I guess, if you could say Warren Spahn is one, and Aaron obviously is one. Eddie Matthews is close. I guess I'd rather have Warren Spahn than Hal Newhouser or Justin Verlander, although it's close. So, I guess we could go Detroit 6. 6 is Detroit and 5 is Atlanta. So that leaves us with the Cards, the Giants, the Yankees, and the A's. I want to say the Cardinals are next.
I had them in the A's in my next tier.
Ken Boyer is not a Hall of Famer, nor is Bert Campaneris. Lefty Grove and Bob Gibson are really close. Ozzie Smith is a great player, but more one-dimensional. This is a tough one.
You agree they're 3 and 4.
I do agree that they're 3 and 4, and it's ironic because we did these all together. 5 and 6 we did in the same night. 3 and so I'm turning over the same piece of paper here for these guys, but I think we're giving it an honest shake. God, Bert Campaneris just stands out like a sore thumb. I feel like we got to put Oakland 3rd because every guy there is an all-time great. Here's what I'm going to say, though. I'd almost think you put Oakland over the Giants.
Really?
So I think the Cardinals are going to be 3rd. We're in agreement.
Cardinals are going to be 4th.
Cardinals are going to be 4th. I'm sorry. Cardinals are going to be 4th. Yeah.
So Tigers, Braves, Cardinals is the second division, as they say.
Yes. All right. So.
And I guess you're kind of tipping your hand if we're going to argue over who's in second.
Yeah. See, the thing is with the Yankees, there's no weak link in the whole lineup. Now, if we were to
maybe second base.
Yeah, he's a Hall of Famer, though, and he's probably, even though he didn't get in until 50 years after he retired, Lazzeri, I think, is a deserving Hall of Famer.
I'm just saying comparably.
Yeah. Garcia Parra is never going to the Hall of Fame. And then with the Garcia Parra, I'm sorry, not Garcia Parra. I was looking to my right. It's we've been doing this for a while tonight, folks.
Actually, compared to recent history,
this actually isn't bad. This actually isn't bad for us. I met Campaneris is never going to the Hall of Fame, nor is Matt Williams. So that was sort of my thought there. Whereas now the one thing I will say is that, I love Whitey Ford, but he is not Christy Mathewson and he's not Lefty Grove. So That to me is almost enough to maybe try and consider the Yankees a little lower. I also just don't want to get into the cliche, oh, well, they're Yankee fans, so they pick the Yankees. But I do feel like Ruth and Mantle kind of,
Well, here's what I would say vis-a-vis the Giants for a minute.
Mhm.
If you were to say the outfield is a wash, and I don't know that I agree with that, but if you were to say the outfield is a wash, right?
Yeah, and it might be.
Okay, so let's call it a wash. It's definitely not a win for the Giants. Like, it's not a clear win for the Giants.
These three teams are all really close.
But so what I'm saying is just vis-a-vis the Giants, then you go to the infield. And the infield, the catcher, Bosey's a great catcher. Berra's a lot better. First base is Gehrig. Cepeda was a great player. Gehrig is better than Cepeda. Shortstop, you got Jeter over
George Davis,
who was from the 1900s. Third base is A-Rod, 1800s. Third base is A-Rod over Matt Williams. I think I think the Yankees are clear of the Giants, even if you consider the outfield a wash and the pitching a big edge to the Giants. I still think the Yankees clip them.
And I agree. So the Giants are third.
You have the A. You're going to try to argue the A's above the Yankees now?
I think the only reason you can't do it is because of Bert Campaneris. I mean, if you look at this, Cochran and Berra is close. It's hard because they played in different eras. Cochran was not really a huge power hitter, but still, that's really close. They're both two of probably the best, 5 or 6 best catchers of all time. Gehrig and Fox were contemporaries. I think Fox has more career home runs. Let's take a look at that here. Now, I guess we're only talking their career during the team that they were on. And so, so here's why you put Gehrig over Fox. Fox was on the Red Sox for 7 years and hit another 220 home runs. So that's why Gehrig gets it over Fox. Yeah. Eddie Collins. Now, again, same thing. Eddie Collins, a lot of his great years were with the White Sox. So, and Ricky Henderson, same thing. Although most, Reggie, same thing. The Yankees get it. Now, I guess
the only one on the Yankees who spent any time on another team, well, Ruth and
A-Rod.
And A-Rod.
Yeah, so then here's the question. I still think you put the A's second because you got 8 Hall of Famers there, and Matt Williams is not a Hall of Famer, and George Davis, maybe he should be, as a 19th century guy, is not a Hall of Famer. I still think based on Lefty Grove and, see, every single one of these guys on the A's put up numbers somewhere else.
Now, let me also proffer another thing to you.
Yeah.
Mr. Mack, in his suit and his gentlemanly demeanor, is going to get his trousers removed by the one true manager. John
Joseph McGraw?
Yes. There is but one. And Connie Mack himself said there's but one manager, and his name is McGraw. I'm not sure that was him, and I'm not sure he actually said it, even if it was him. But and we're not factoring that in. But other than that,
they never played in the World Series, did they? Or did they?
Played in 05.
And McGraw won. I think they might have
played. They played in 11 too, didn't they?
They played in 11, and the A's won that one. Yeah. Did they play in? Was 13 the same two teams? I think it might have been. Or was 13?
Because
13 was
those A's teams made like a bunch of worlds. Yeah, 13 was the A's. The A's won.
Okay, so Mac beat him twice. Yeah, and I think I got to. No, I'm still going to say Oakland is second, but it's damn.
I go with the Giants second, but we're not going to resolve that. So
you could still say the same thing about a lot of the guys in the Giants that they did a lot of their stuff elsewhere. Bonds, Frankie Frisch, even McCovey to a certain extent. So
not the big two, though. Not the big two.
Mays and Ott.
And Mathewson. Mays and Mathewson.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. We can call that a tie for second if it'll make you feel satisfied.
That's fine. So Yankees, Giants, A's, Cardinals, Braves, Tigers is the order I have written down.
Yeah, and I would consider swapping the A's and the Giants.
All right, now we'll go to the second place teams.
Well, just real quick, the best second place team, we're not going to do this for every single one, but the best second place team...
Red Sox?
Probably the Red Sox. Yeah, I think you could make a strong case for the Cubs also with, Ernie Banks, Cap Anson, Billy Williams, Ron Santo, Ryan Sandberg. But yeah, Boston probably gets it, especially with, with Williams and, with Ted Williams probably pushes them over the edge. And then the only other thing I would say is who do you think the best last place team is that we had? I'm looking at Tampa, Colorado, Florida, the Royals. Who was fifth? The Angels. I'm going to proffer that it might be Milwaukee with two really solid Hall of Famers who played most of their career in Milwaukee with Paul Molitor and Robin Yount. And then two other guys in Christian Yelich and Ryan Braun who won MVPs with the Marlins.
That's probably a good point.
It could also be Anaheim, but yeah, I think probably the Brewers. So
yeah.
All right. Well, that
feels like a long time ago we did that one.
Yeah, that was like April. Yeah, that was a really long time ago. So we did one to coincide with the beginning of the season. We did one, two to coincide with the beginning of the season. We did two to coincide with sort of the summer and the around the All-Star break, and we did two to coincide with the postseason and the World Series. So this was fun. We love doing lists, and it's becoming a challenge to come up with new lists to do. But so if anybody has any suggestions, hellooldsports@gmail.com. But this was good. We had a lot of fun with this, and it's been a fun 6 episodes. So I guess anything to add before we sign off?
No. I was kind of looking. I knew we were doing the 2 divisions tonight, but I was also kind of looking forward to sort of the synthesis at the end. So I think that was fun too.
Cool. All right. Well, until next time, we appreciate you listening as always. Enjoy the October, great sports month, great baseball postseason month, and we'll see you around the way. I'm Dan Newman.
And I'm Andrew Newman. Goodbye, old sports.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com. Hey there, sports history fan. This is Arnie Chapman, a.k.a. the Football History Dude, and I wanted to thank you for stopping by to listen to another episode here on the Sports History Network. Our podcasters are passionate about uncovering and sharing sports stories from yesteryear. And if you didn't know it already, we have over 30 shows across the network covering all sorts of sports history topics. In fact, here's a glimpse into one of our awesome podcasts here on the network.
With every race, every qualifying run, and every pit stop, Tim Coffeen would feel the pressure and excitement. With his own podcast on the Sports History Network called Tim Coffeen Talks IndyCar and Racing History, Tim will share those very same racing emotions and memories with his listeners. Learn, laugh, and enjoy the world of IndyCar racing through the eyes of Tim Coffeen.
How about that? I bet you're super hyped to go listen to that new podcast, right? Well, to learn about this show and all the other podcasts on the network, head over to sportshistorynetwork.com/podcasts. Again, that's sportshistorynetwork.com/podcasts. Head over there today to find your next favorite sports history podcast.